Hey everybody, just wanted to talk to you about a classic mistake in the reading section. So this is number 2, and this is a classic example of a mistake that happens in every test, just about. It's the mistake of who's who. You could also call it the mistake of character confusion. Now, if you want to give this question a try on your own before I get started, go ahead and pause the video right now. But what's going on is we have a question that asks about the main purpose of the opening sentence of the passage. Now, the opening sentence is up here. It ends with the word land right here. So if you want to follow along in pieces, feel free to pause the video. This passage is about a guy who hates his job. And he has this metaphor at the beginning. It says, "No man likes to acknowledge that he has made a mistake in the choice of his profession, and every man worthy of his name," here's the metaphor, "will row long against wind and tide before he allows himself to cry out, 'I am baffled,' and submits to be floated passively back to land." So they ask about the main purpose of that sentence. Now, this answer choice is really, really tempting. I mean, this sounds really nice, a symbolic representation. In a sense, you could call that like an English class answer, which is another thing that we talk about when we're coaching folks. An English class answer is something that just sounds really nice and smart. Typically, these are wrong. These answers that sound nice and smart, sadly. However, this is let's at least give them some credit. It is a symbolic representation, rowing against the wind and the tide before you're floating back to land. So trying your hardest despite conditions that are going against you. That's a symbolic representation of the plight of somebody. But just so happens that Edward Crimsworth is not that somebody. We find out Edward Crimsworth, the first place they mention his name is right here, which is why I've included this part. He's the boss of our narrator, and the narrator and his boss just don't get along. So the point is that you want to look out for, as a test taker, anytime names come up. Anytime you see names coming up, just make sure you're not falling into a trap where you're like, yeah, it was this guy, and that answer looks great, so I remember that name, it must be him. They're not that nice over those test makers. The people who make this test, they're oftentimes trying to create little traps for you like this. So this is a who's who mistake because this is not the right character. And we could call this an English class answer. The other thing we could say about this question is that it's a main purpose, or not main purpose, but it's a purpose question. That's about the purpose of the opening sentence. Typically, when we are asked about the purpose of something, we can look at the lines immediately following it. And these lines say that from the first week of my residence in X, I felt my occupation irksome, the thing of itself, and he goes on to describe that he hates the work he's doing. Right? So, I mean, there's no controversy here. It's not about malicious conduct. It lets us know where the narrator's at. And this answer doesn't jump off the page to me as obvious and right. But if you go through a process of elimination and you are highly attuned to this idea of character confusion, you can probably get this one right. So I would encourage you all to look through other practice tests. And this is a really kind of focused assignment. It's just always the first passage. It's always this first passage that has this kind of an issue in it. You can find English class answers all over the place. You can find purpose questions, function and purpose questions all over the place. But this who's who character confusion bit is something that's only in the first passage. And so you could go through the first passage in every test and see if you find any answer choices or questions that use proper nouns, and see if you can find the answer choice that plays with expectations a little bit, kind of messes with you. Okay, so that's it for who's who or character confusion. See if you can find these on your own and email us, text us, message us on Skype, and let us know what you found. Take care.